The conference room smelled like stale coffee and printer ink, the kind of smell that had soaked into the walls over decades. I sat on one side of the long mahogany table, my hands folded in my lap so no one could see them shaking. My attorney, a quiet woman with reading glasses perpetually pushed up on her forehead, had her legal pad open in front of her. Across the table sat my brother-in-law and his lawyer, a man in a suit that probably cost more than my first car. I was 63 years old and I was fighting for what my husband had spent 31 years building. What we had spent 31 years building, though apparently that distinction was lost on everyone in that room except me. Let me go back to the beginning, because none of this makes sense without it. My husband passed away 14 months before that meeting. A heart attack, sudden, the kind that doesn't give you time to say goodbye, or finish a sentence, or find the words you'd been meaning to say for years. He was 67. We had been married since I was 32 and he was 36. Two people who found each other a little later than most and were grateful for it every single day. His name was Owen. I called him that, and I'll call him that here, because he deserves to be remembered as a person, not just as a role in this story. Owen had built a small manufacturing business from nothing. Not glamorous. Specialty metal components for agricultural equipment. Not the kind of thing that comes up at dinner parties. But it was his, and then it was ours, and over the years it had grown into something real. 42 employees, a facility in Ohio he was proud of, a reputation in the industry that took decades to earn. His younger brother had worked in the company too, for about 6 years in sales, before falling out with Owen over a contract decision led to him leaving. That had been nearly 15 years before Owen died. They spoke occasionally after that, holidays, birthdays, the kind of obligatory contact that holds a family together by the thinnest thread. Owen always said his brother had talent but couldn't stand not being in charge. I didn't know then how right he was. Owen's will was clear. The business passed to me, the house, the accounts, the company, all of it. He had consulted with his estate attorney multiple times over the years to make sure everything was structured properly. I had my own copy of the will. Our attorney had a copy. The probate court had a copy. And yet, 4 months after Owen's funeral, my brother-in-law appeared at my door with a different document. He stood on my porch with his hands in his coat pockets, and he told me that Owen had signed a revised business trust agreement 18 months before he died, one that names the two of them as co-trustees with equal authority, one that, in the event of Owen's death, transferred full operational control of the company to him. I told him I'd never heard of any such document. He said that was unfortunate, and handed me a manila envelope. I won't pretend I was calm. I went inside, sat at the kitchen table, and cried for about 20 minutes. Not the gentle kind of crying. The ugly, gasping kind that comes from somewhere deep and frightened. Then I blew my nose, called my attorney, and told her everything. She reviewed the document over the next 2 days. Then she called me. "This is going to be complicated," she said. The trust agreement bore Owen's signature. It had been notarized. On paper, it looked legitimate. My attorney explained that we would need to challenge it, that the burden of proof would be on us to demonstrate it was either forged or obtained under circumstances that made it invalid. That meant an expensive, time-consuming legal process with no guaranteed outcome. My brother-in-law, in the meantime, had already contacted the company's operations manager and informed him of the change in authority. I had spent 31 years supporting Owen in every way I knew how. I had handled the books during the lean years when we couldn't afford a full-time accountant. I had driven to the facility at midnight when the heating system failed and someone needed to be there to authorize the repair. I had sat across from bankers and suppliers and regulators, not because I was required to, but because it was our company, and that's what you do. I had given up a position at a nonprofit I loved, because Owen needed me full-time for 2 years during a period of rapid growth, and I had done it without resentment because we were a team. Now, I was being told I might lose everything because of a piece of paper I had never seen. Our daughter took the news the way she takes most hard things. Quietly at first, then with a focused, methodical anger that I have always found both terrifying and reassuring. She's 34, works in data analysis, and has a mind that operates like a very patient machine. She didn't cry. She asked questions. She asked a lot of questions. She also asked to see every document related to Owen's estate that I had in the house. I gave her access to everything: the filing cabinet in the office, the folders on Owen's old laptop, the binder I'd put together after he passed with all the relevant paperwork. She spent 3 weekends going through it. I brought her coffee and stayed out of her way. On the 4th weekend, she called me into the office and pointed at the laptop screen. Owen had kept meticulous records, everything dated, everything filed. He was like that, organized in a way I never quite managed to be. And there, in a folder labeled simply Legal Archive, was an email chain from approximately 20 months before he died. The emails were between Owen and his brother. His brother had approached Owen with the trust restructuring idea. Owen's responses were measured at first, then increasingly firm. In the final email, written in Owen's unmistakable style, short sentences, no pleasantries, straight to the point, he had written, "I'm not signing anything that gives you control of what I built. This conversation is over. Don't bring it up again." The email was dated 4 months before the notarized trust agreement claimed Owen had signed it. My daughter printed everything. 17 pages. She put them in a folder, labeled it in her neat handwriting, and set it on the desk in front of me. "Mom," she said, "I think he forged it." My attorney, when she saw the emails, went very quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "This changes things considerably." The mediation session had been scheduled weeks in advance, a formal attempt to resolve the dispute before it went to full litigation. My brother-in-law had agreed to it, probably because he assumed I would be exhausted and frightened enough to accept some partial settlement. His attorney had a reputation for this kind of thing: apply pressure, wait, collect. I arrived at the mediation with my attorney, the printed emails, and a forensic document examiner's preliminary report that my attorney had commissioned, which raised significant questions about the ink dating on the signature page of the trust agreement. My brother-in-law was already in the room when we walked in. He looked confident. He had that particular ease of someone who believes the outcome has already been decided. The mediator opened the session with the standard language about good faith and mutual resolution. My attorney said we had new evidence to present. My brother-in-law's attorney objected immediately, said this was procedurally irregular, said we should have disclosed any new materials in advance. My attorney explained calmly that the materials had only recently come to our attention through a review of the deceased's personal files. The mediator asked to see the documents. What happened next took about 45 minutes, but it felt both longer and shorter than that. The mediator read the emails. He read the forensic examiner's report. He asked several clarifying questions. My brother-in-law's attorney conferred with his client in hushed, urgent tones that I could not hear but could read entirely in the set of my brother-in-law's shoulders, which had gone from relaxed to rigid in about 3 minutes. At one point, my brother-in-law looked directly at me across the table. I don't know what he expected to see. Whatever it was, I don't think he found it. I thought about Owen. I thought about how he had written that email, "I'm not signing anything that gives you control of what I built," and how that sentence sounded exactly like him, how I could hear his voice in it, how he had seen this coming in some form and had said no, clearly and in writing, and someone had decided that didn't matter. I didn't say any of this out loud. I sat with my hands folded on the table, and I waited. The mediation did not resolve that day, but the landscape had shifted completely. Within 6 weeks, my brother-in-law's attorney contacted mine with a proposal to withdraw the trust document from contention, pending further review. 3 weeks after that, a more thorough forensic examination confirmed that the signature page had almost certainly been substituted, The ink composition and paper aging were inconsistent with the document's purported date. The case was referred to the county prosecutor's office. I'm not going to tell you I felt triumphant. I felt tired, mostly, and sad, the kind of sad that comes from understanding, fully, what someone was willing to do. Owen's brother had sat at our Thanksgiving table. He had held our daughter when she was an infant. He had given a toast at our 25th anniversary that made people cry. And he had looked at everything Owen spent his life building and decided it should belong to him, and that a forged document was a reasonable way to make that happen. The company is still mine. I have a general manager I trust, a woman who has been with the business for 11 years and knows every corner of it. We talk every week. I'm not in the building every day the way Owen was. I'm 63. Not 45, and there are things I simply cannot and should not try to replicate about the way he operated. But I'm involved. I'm present. I know the employees by name. I know the contracts. I know the problems. I also, finally, took the trip to Portugal that Owen and I had been planning for years and never quite gotten to. I went alone, which was not what I had imagined. I walked through Lisbon in October, when the light comes in at a low angle and turns everything gold, and I sat at a table outside a small restaurant near the water and ate grilled fish and drank a glass of white wine and thought about him. I talked to him a little, the way you do when you've been with someone long enough that the habit of speaking to them doesn't just disappear. I told him what his daughter had found. I told him she had gone through every folder and every file with the same patient, methodical energy she's had since she was a child, doing math homework at the kitchen table. I told him she had found his email, the one where he said no, clearly in writing, and that it had made all the difference. I think he would have found that exactly right. My daughter has his eyes. She also has, it turns out, his instinct for keeping records. She knew, without anyone telling her, that the truth was probably somewhere in the files, that Owen was organized enough, careful enough, that he would have left a trail. She just had to find it. She doesn't like when I tell people this story and describe her as a hero. She says she just did what made sense. She says she went through the files because someone had to, and because she wanted to know what actually happened. That's true. That's also what a hero does. I came back from Portugal with a small ceramic tile I bought at a market, the blue and white kind that's everywhere there, painted with a simple geometric pattern. It sits on my kitchen windowsill now. Some mornings I stand at the sink and look at it while the coffee brews, and I think about the fact that I almost lost everything Owen built because someone was willing to count on me being too overwhelmed to look closely. I wasn't. Or rather, I was overwhelmed. I absolutely was. But I had a daughter who looked closely on my behalf, and a husband who had, years before any of this happened, written down exactly what he intended and exactly what he refused to allow. That turned out to be enough. If you are in a marriage or a partnership or any arrangement where you've built something together, please have the documents in order. Please keep copies of the copies. Please don't assume that the people who love you will always behave like people who love you when there is something significant at stake. Owen was smarter about this than I was. He kept the emails. He maintained the archive. He was meticulous about the paper trail in a way that felt, at the time, like just another one of his habits. It was, in the end, the thing that protected me after he was gone. I am 63 years old. I have a company I didn't expect to be running, a daughter I am proud of in a way I cannot fully articulate, and a ceramic tile on my windowsill from a country I finally got to see. I have mornings when I miss Owen so acutely that the house feels wrong, too quiet, arranged slightly incorrectly without him in it. But I have what he built, and no one took it.